Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Perry Marshall with us. Perry, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm usually on like marketing oriented interviews and stuff, and this is more of a equity startup, little more of a Silicon Valley feel, maybe let's say. And so I think it's great to be here today.
Yeah,
So
maybe we can introduce you to a slightly new audience, and
yeah,
so they can know how awesome you are, like I already do.
well, thanks for having me. I'm really eager to dig in.
Yeah.
So
Well, let me tell people a little bit about you. You've done so much over the last couple decades, but at a very high level, you're an internet marketing strategist. You're an author of multiple marketing books. I mean, so many. I'm not going to list them all. You're an expert on pay-per-click advertising, and that's amongst many other things. Does that kind of sum you up, or is there any really big things I forgot there?
no, that's fair, and I've generally been pigeonholed as a pay-per-click or Google AdWords guy, and I'm actually happy to do that
Yeah.
because it brings people to my front door, and then we do jazz improvisation or disco or whatever country or whatever flavor is appropriate after that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a fun, interesting life for an ADHD guy who needs stimulation.
I think all of all of us marketers have a little bit of ADHD because marketing you get to play with so many things. But I think
Yes.
you get pigeonholed with the Google stuff because you came out with Google AdWord book. I mean, way before people were really digging into it, and I mean,
Right.
you coined phrases that people use around
Yes.
Google AdWords. So I mean, you're known for it because you really made a mark on that industry. So I think it's a fair assessment there. But let's dig into some of your books a little bit. Let's start there. I want to start with one that you recently or more recently came out with called 80/20 Sales and Marketing. And the funny story behind this is one of my co-founders of Growth Hacker TV is, he was reading 80/20 growth or 80/20 sales and marketing, and he keeps texting me photos of the page as he's reading it, or he quotes pieces of it. And so I'll be somewhere driving, I'm looking down, there's a piece of a page on a text message, and I'm trying to read it, see what insight he's trying to show me here. And it was your book, it was Perry Marshall's 80/20 Marketing. And it was just awesome insight. We've talked about it many times. It's helped us kind of refine some of the things we do. But tell me first, what does that title mean? I think people are somewhat familiar with 80/20, but break
Right.
it down. What does 80/20 sales and marketing mean?
Well, what it really means is that everything smart that you do in sales and marketing has something to do with 80/20. And so, there are two ways that you can approach any subject, okay? One way is that you can learn enough little techniques or band-aids or whatever so that you can manage to somehow get to a result that you want, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how most of us learn. Look, if you want to play drums, like you're watching, well, here's the Jimi Hendrix technique for, and they'll like sit there and they'll like mimic it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's another way to approach anything, and that is from the deep principle.
Okay.
If you could get to the bottom core essence of something, where you've made it as simple as possible and absolutely no simpler, okay? And the latter is way more powerful, way more powerful than the former. And all the great masters focus on like they're always like trying to claw their way past the forest, past the trees, and like get to, okay, yeah, but what's really at the center of this, okay? And so like Einstein came up with E equals mc squared, which actually means energy equals matter times the speed of light times the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you can show it to a seventh grader, and a good science teacher can explain it to a seventh grader, and a seventh grader can actually understand it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's incredibly powerful. Okay?
To say the least.
Okay, now, everything that you really, really, really want to know, if you're wise, is like that. Okay? The book of Proverbs in the Bible, there are so many just like beautiful little things in there, like A soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. Well, when you're pissed at somebody, it's really easy to forget that if you could go down to a calm, quiet tone of voice and just like be slow and deliberate and listen to them, like it'll probably go away, right?
Yeah.
Or you could turn it into Iraq if you want. So, like, which way do you want it, right? But it's like these really simple things. And so what 80/20 sales and marketing is that most people only, fortunately, at least, I think most business people have heard of 80/20. They have some idea what it is, and it certainly does them some good. Okay, that's great. But they only understand it at that surface level. And what this book is about is that 80/20 is one of the core fundamental principles of literally the universe. Okay, it is absolutely everywhere. And if I can flip a switch in your brain by getting you to read my book to where all of a sudden you see 80/20 when you look out the window, you see 80/20 when you read a spreadsheet, you see 80/20 in your email box, you see 80/20 in your marketing plan, you see 80/20 in your sales video, when all of a sudden, like, I flip that on and you see it everywhere, all of a sudden you will start functioning differently. Everything you do, everywhere you go. And now, so think about, okay, so I write a Google AdWords book and I write a Facebook book. And what those books are here. You got this Google account, you got this website, so do this, do this, do this, and you make money, right? And it is mostly taught like from that surface level and then kind of trying to work its way down. But what I did with the 80/20 book, see, what all those books really were, I mean, in all honesty, I said, I'm going to apply 80/20 to Google AdWords, and then what's going to happen? And the result was the entire Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, which is a bestseller now, right? I'm going to apply 80/20 to Facebook, and what does that mean when you actually carry it out, right? And so, like, for example, the entire Google AdWords book is built on the premise that 95% of your traffic comes from 5% of your keywords. 95/5. Okay, it's not 80/20, it's 95/5.
Same idea.
Right. Therefore, you can get 95% of the results by doing 5% of the work. So this is the work you do, and this is what you focus on, and this is this huge part that you ignore.
Yeah.
What I decided to do with the 80/20 book was, okay, I'm going to show everybody the secret sauce. I'm going to show everybody the thinking that got me the last two books.
Yeah.
And I, like, here is the man behind the curtain. Okay, and so I'm going to start from E equals MC squared, and I'm going to work my way to atomic bombs instead of going the other way, the other way around. Okay, and that is what that book really is. Yeah. And I, if I may be so bold, I dare say it is the only marketing book that you probably bought this year or read this year that will still be 80 to 90% true 25 years from now. This book will still be good. It'll be good reading and good advice. It'll get you immediate results as well as good long-term results 20 years from now.
Well, because it's not about a tactic on the fringe. It's about the core of growth in business, which is relevant for long beyond 2014.
Right, because 80/20 is everywhere. 80/20 applies to the size of stars and planets, and it applies to the size of craters on the moon, and it applies to sap in tree branches, and it's because it's a law of cause and effect. There's a law that says that 20% of what you do will produce 80% of the results. And it's true in the universe, and it's true in your spreadsheets, and it's true in your computer, and it's true everywhere. So if I can get everybody to see that, they're automatically going to sweep half of what they're doing completely off the table. Hopefully 80 or 90% will just completely get swept off the table, and you'll be left with, like, dude, you don't even know how powerful that other 10% actually is. And this is what people don't know. They don't know that 1% of what they do produces 50% of what they get.
Yeah.
Those
And
tiny
if they can focus on that, see, when you're doing everything, you don't get to focus, so you don't get to explode the power in that 1% or in that 10%. But if you stop doing the 80, you stop doing the 90, you start focusing, focus just, it allows things to really get crazy.
It does. It does. And so, so I put that out, and, my brother-in-law said, man, I think you told him everything, Perry. Why is anybody gonna, but the funny thing is the book brings us $50,000 consulting gigs. Why? Because, people don't want to have to do everything themselves or figure out everything for themselves. So it's great.
Okay, let's make this practical now. I think we've sold them that 80/20 is in the universe and it's super important, but we haven't really helped them figure out what to do with their business yet. So is it really just a matter of them looking at what's going on in their business and saying, look, these are the few things that are working. Everything else is costing us. These things are bringing us money in. Let's just focus on those. Or is it more complicated and nuanced than that when you actually look at a business?
Well, so the thing that people don't realize is that 80/20s multiply together. Okay?
All right, what does that mean?
And so what does that mean? Well, first of all, there's the 80 and there's the 20, but there's also the 80/20 of the 80/20. So if I got 1,000 salespeople and I go, well, 200 of them produce 80% of the sales. True. Yep. Almost guaranteed to be true. That 200 will generate 80% of your sales. Well, so those 200 that are left, 80% of the sales comes from 20% of them, right? And then 80% comes from 20% of them. So actually what that means is half of your sales comes from 5 of them or something, or 10, okay? Or 10 or 5 or 10 or 20, this huge amount of results comes from a very small part. Well, so we do 80/20 squared or 80/20 cubed, and we get down to this 1%. But what people don't realize is, okay, now's when you need to add fuel to the fire, because the fact that those salespeople are so effective means that every dollar you invest in making them more effective will be exponentially more valuable than what you would invest in anybody else. So what does that mean you need to do? Well, it needs you need to send them to training, and you need to train them on what they're already good at. It means you need to stop beating them up for all the stuff they're not good at, like filling out expense reports or whatever.
TPS
it
reports.
Means you probably should hire them a couple of assistants and a travel agent and a chauffeur, and if necessary, a personal organizer or somebody to follow them around and pick up their clothes out of hotel rooms or whatever. Okay, right? And that's, I mean, if you've lived in corporate America, you know that's the exact opposite of what they do.
Yeah.
They throw sand in their wheels and they bog them down and they harass them and they torture them and and they berate them and all this kind of stuff. Look, if the guy's good at closing, then just get him closing, right? Yeah. And feed them all the marketing, all the leads that they need, and don't resent it, right? Okay, so that's one really powerful thing. But now let's multiply it again, because now let's look at your product lines. Let's say that you've got 1,000 products. Well, guess what? 50% of your sales probably come from 10.
Yeah.
Right? So now, I'll guarantee if you're not really ruthless about 80/20, you're spending all this product development money and all this time and staff and everything on products that are not anywhere near the top 1%. Whereas it's well, we've got 1,000 salespeople and we have 100,000 customers and we have 1,000 products. But when you intersect all those things together, there's probably 5 salespeople, 5 products, and 5 customers that all just those few combinations are a third of your revenue.
Yeah. It makes things simple.
And so now, we're going to dramatically simplify. Now you go, well, this super big customer has been complaining about this one issue with this product for years, and we never got around to it. If we actually solved that, they would buy twice as much, right?
Yeah.
And so, and it's always there. And again, people don't realize when you take energy away from that 80% and you feed it into the 4%, the 1%, the 0.5%, that tippy top effectiveness, it is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Well, one of the insights that I'm walking away with is this idea that simple things are probably the right things. It's just the way the universe is built. Like you mentioned Einstein. Like what's the chances that E = mc squared actually describes a piece of the universe? I mean, that's obscenely, improbable that something that simple actually describes the universe accurately. But you would expect it to take up a whole sheet of paper of small writing, and it doesn't. And that's the same thing with business. As business has a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs and a lot of energy being expended and a lot of things happening, you're probably doing it wrong. The simpler things probably actually describe the best version of the universe better.
Well, yes, and I'm by education, I'm an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And I can attest to you that everything in physics is simple. Okay? Now, when it multiplies exponentially in complexity when you start combining things together, right? And pretty soon you're in organic chemistry and your biology, and it's like, whoa. Okay, but so there's if you want a geek moment, go to Google Images, type in Maxwell's equations, and you'll see these 4 little equations in calculus, and you probably won't know what they mean, but they completely describe all light, electricity, and magnetism.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's T-shirts that go, and God said Maxwell's equations, and there was light, and it's absolutely true, right? They're actually, even if you don't understand them, you can see they're kind of symmetrical and they're elegant and they're beautiful, and you could put them on a T-shirt. You can put the laws of light and magnetism on a T-shirt, right? Now, if you get that this is how the universe really is, and you get that business is actually the same way, then that doesn't mean you've figured out the simplicity, but it means you know where to look. And you know that if the equation is 9 miles long, it's wrong.
Exactly.
And the great scientists said this too, okay? Yeah. Like, if it's not beautiful, if it's not simple, I know it's wrong. And so, this is such a mindset shift. It's so different than, it's like, stop listening. 90% of the people you're listening to, you should not be listening to. 90% of stuff you're doing, you should not be doing, and life becomes so much simpler. It is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy. Was it easy for Einstein to come up with that? Well, I think he had to stretch his brain cells really far. And you read the books, and he's imagining that he's on a train, and the train's going 99% the speed of light, and he's bowling a bowling ball down the middle of the train. Yeah. But it's really cool, right? When and it produces this beautiful thing.
He stayed with a problem long enough to find the simple solution, and we stop in business while things are still extremely complex. We don't have the something inside of us, the grit, to get to the simple, pure, easy equation that describes everything. And we actually, it's not only that we don't understand 80-20, it's that we actually think 20-80 is the right way. We actually feel good when we're really busy. And we feel good when there's so much going on that we're investing in everything. And, I think about Jack Welch. He goes into G and he says, if we're not number 1 or number 2 in a market, kill the line. We don't need to be in it. And that's 80-20 thinking, even though he didn't use that language. I think about the book I just read, Mastery, and it's that same idea that these masters are masters not because they got complicated on the fringe, but because they got to the equation that mattered and then expanded out from there. And it's just such a mindset shift, just like you're saying. Is it possible to make this shift, or do you just have to have somebody like Steve Jobs around you doing it for the organization? Because he knew this. This is the way he thought, and this is the way Einstein thought, and this is the way Maxwell thought. It's not the way most CEOs or entrepreneurs think. Can you change your thinking, or do you just need to get somebody around you that already does this?
Yes, you can change your thinking, and here's the proof. Okay, I need to make an Alcoholics Anonymous confessional that I like complexity. I remember when I was 4 years old, I got a hammer and I broke open my dad's transistor radio because I wanted to see the wires and circuits inside. Okay. Now, of course, he was really upset about this, and I got in trouble for ruining his radio. But I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Look at all those little parts in there, right? Okay. I like complicated things. Ooh, right? Like, oh, and then I could add this, and then I could add this, and then I could add this. But I also have learned that once I make it all complicated, and probably it does work. I build this giant Rube Goldberg machine, and eventually, like, I do actually get the thing to work, as we all do, right? Okay, now, Perry, simplify it.
So you go
make
through
it
the
easier
complexity to get to the simple.
Right. Strip away. Okay. So how could you rebuild this thing with 1/5 the parts? Could you do that? Like, with a lot of thought, yes, you can. Okay. Now, Steve Jobs was absolutely a bitch about this. Right? And you've read the stories, and he was not a nice guy, and he would yell at people, but he was like, why did you have 7 clicks to get to that when you could have got to that software menu in 2? What is your problem? Right? It was like, pound the slag off of this thing and get it simpler and get it simpler and get it simpler. And it's just another step. And most people, because what happens is the complicated version is usually adequate. And then most people are happy with adequate. So, like, Microsoft Windows was adequate for 20 years, right? And then Steve Jobs is like, no, it's not. This is not adequate. This is like, let's not use expletives, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to fix that, right? And he made some elegant. So now my daughter is using her iPad to watch videos and play games at age 2.5.
Yep.
I think you have to be 6 or 7 before you can use Microsoft Windows.
I still can't use it, so I don't.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, only the smart 7-year-olds can use Microsoft Windows, but all of the 3-year-olds can use an iPad, right? Okay. There's a major, huge lesson in that. Okay? So, like, okay, you made something complicated, fine, but I want you to have faith. You can make something with 80% of the functionality, 80% of the value, with only 20% of the parts, 20% of the cost, whatever. I've got a friend named Lynn Bertain, and he has this thing called the 567 rule. 67% of the benefit of whatever you sell is 5% of the features and complexity.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. And one of the insights, too, is that with a Rube Goldberg machine, which most companies are, it's barely hanging together, is that there's so many points that could fail. And at any point of failure, the whole thing breaks. Simple things are robust. Simple things, it's hard to take down. It's hard to destroy them. It's hard to stop them. Complex things are actually easy to find holes in and easy to tear apart. So, I mean, I really do believe this is a fundamental piece of the universe, not just something clever for marketers to latch onto for the next few years.
Yes, so this is, therefore, this is an invitation to go on a Zen-like path of changing your mindset of everything you do. So, like, the 80-20 book is like, oh, you want to make more money? Do this. You want to make more money? Do this. And you can go chapter by chapter by chapter. Oh, you want to cut out 1 or 2 hours out of your day and save a bunch of time? Do this and this and this. And it all works, and it's very technique-driven. But please understand that what I'm really inviting you on is a journey to start to see the world in this whole completely different way. It's like, you really should read this book twice or 3 times or maybe every year, and you should, like, turn on your radar. Okay, I am looking for the simplifiers, and I'm going to start to tell the difference. Okay, this person's a simplifier. Good. This person's a complexifier. Bad. Right? Or maybe the complexifier is useful up to a certain point, but you have to corral them in. Right? And if you can simplify, Okay, you know what Jesus did? He took 613 commandments and he reduced them to two.
Love God, love people.
Right, right. 613 down to two. You could not get better simplification than that. Now, how profound is love God, love people?
It sums up everything. The
It's
entire
like-
law hangs on these two commands.
It's deep.
Yeah.
It is so deep. You'll spend your whole life I'm trying to figure out how to love people. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
it's the E equals MC squared of, being a human.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
every industry is going to have their version of that. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I want people that are watching this to start really thinking, what is the 20%? We don't know because we don't know what's going on in their business. But if they'll look at the numbers, look at their habits, look at everything, I think it is pretty obvious. And one of the things that actually helped me a lot is something I didn't choose, but I had twins. You don't choose to have twins, you have twins. And we have twins. And so I went from an 8-hour workday to I work when I get a chance to. So what that meant is when I sit down at a computer to work, I have to think, what's the 20%? If it is not the thing that moves the needle, it does not get my attention. I can't play email games. I can't, go and read blogs and act like it's work. Like, I have to literally open the laptop and efficiently move my mouse to the thing that's going to make me money and then shut the laptop and do stuff with the kids. And so
Yes.
it's made me an 80-20 person just because, I've been refined by fire with, twins and a 5-year-old. At first, it was hard because I was used to complication and working more. Now, I will forever be a more efficient entrepreneur, and I'll never go back to a bloated lifestyle, even when I get the free time at some point in the future when they're in college.
Right. Right. Well, and what you just said, I had twins. See, that's a parable for, something happened to me that was out of my control, and I suddenly realized I had to make more with less.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think there's any limit to how much more you can make with less. And
Right.
and people do not understand this. There's a whole bunch of people in the world going, we're running out of everything. We're running out of energy. We're running out of water. We're running out of air. We're running out of... Well, you know what? We've been running out of stuff for at least 500 years. Okay? 150 years ago, it was whale oil. We're running out of whales. Yeah, we were. Right? And then we figured out how to use something else. Is anybody heating their houses with whale oil anymore?
Yeah.
No, it's ridiculous. 100 years from now, is anybody going to heat their houses with oil? I doubt it.
Yeah, there's no end
Okay.
to this iteration cycle of 80-20 that you mentioned earlier. You can
Right.
always take it to the next level and refine again. And right now, even with the twins at the house, I'm not missing a beat. I mean, I'm as energized, I'm as productive, I'm as good of a leader, and actually better in all those areas because of it. And other people are astounded by it, but to me, it's just like, this is the new normal. Now I'm efficient.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, well, one of my favorite musicians is this drummer named Gavin Harrison. He plays for Porcupine Tree, and he's just absolutely brilliant. And he made this comment that just really stuck with me. Is he figured out he is not as fast. He can't play as many beats as this guy or that guy or the other guy. But he goes, you know what I could do? He goes, I could use this muscle right here.
Your brain.
And if you're and all the great musicians and all the great artists, that's what they actually do. Is how do I do more with less? How do I communicate more with silence than I do by banging on that China cymbal and doing a double bass or whatever? And it's what makes him a genius, and it's what makes him distinctive when you listen to him. And I'm sure everybody's favorite guitarist or their favorite conductor or whatever that you could say that, and so it really is an art. But I guess one of the things that there's a whole there's a website called 8020curve.com, and there's a whole numbers side of the 80-20 book. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to prove to rational people who aren't even ready for the art part, but that they could read a spreadsheet that no, 80-20 is infinite. It's an infinite leverage within a finite space. And when you read the book, you'll really actually get that there's an infinite number of 80/20s inside the 80/20, and you know, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to like the last person, the last customer. And like, well, yeah, you know, customers are finite, but you can't believe how much money they'll spend with you if you put the right thing in front of them.
Yeah, and even last night, me and one of the co-founders were talking about something we're going to do with Growth Hacker TV, and it was something that would have made us money. We would have made a few grand from it, and then we thought, no, it's not in the 20. Just forget it. Like, it's not worth the investment because it's not the thing that has the real leverage. And so that's a decision we wouldn't have made 2 months ago. And so it's just our thinking is changing. All right, let's shift gears just a little bit. I do think 80/20 is the reason this interview is going to matter because, like you said, it's the thing with longevity. But you know so much about pay-per-click. I have to at least dive into it and talk tactics for a second, even though it's not the principle that's going to outlive us. So pay-per-click, in general, you wrote the book on Google AdWords, Facebook, Ultimate Guide to Advertising, all that stuff. Pay-per-click in general, is it slowing down or speeding up as a growth engine for companies? How do you look at it? Because you hear both all the time. Oh, it's never been better. Oh, we can't make a buck on it.
Well, both are true. Okay. And so what has actually happened is that as it's matured, it's gone from being an 80/20 thing to being a 90/10 thing. 90% of the success is experienced by 10% of the advertisers. And actually what I've observed is almost everything on the internet is 90/10, not 80/20. Okay, so the outsiders looking in are majorly outsiders looking in.
Gotcha.
And when you win big on the internet, you win huge on the internet. Okay, and so this actually, I wrote 2 completely, like, totally radically brand new chapters for my 4th edition of the Google AdWords book. And what I actually talked to people about in those new chapters was Richard Koch's concept of the star principle, because that actually tells you which pay-per-click markets you're going to be able to maneuver in and which ones are going to be gridlocked. And star principle says you want to be the number one player in a market that's growing 10% a year. And if you're not the number one player, you need to find a sub-niche within that market that doesn't have a number one player that's also growing at 10% a year. And so it's always about finding the growing opportunity where other people have not moved and occupied the space. So if you're going to sell weight loss pills and you're going to go on Google AdWords and you're going to advertise, well,
too late.
Good luck. Now, you can do it if you have millions of dollars or maybe tens of millions of dollars of capital, and you can build a tremendous sales machine and you have a tremendous product. But man, doggone it, that thing better have an incredible USP. And you know, and plus you're still going to have all these regulatory problems and all this other stuff. Whereas if you find a growing sub niche that's really, you know, nobody's really scratching that itch, and there is always, I mean, as long as the internet shall exist, there will be people looking for something that they can't find. Okay?
The sub niches, we're not going to run out.
You'll never run out of sub niches. Okay, now Facebook is, you know, Google AdWords has gotten fairly mature, and so like you better know what you're doing, and you better find a sub niche where you can carve, and you can. And again, you know, in the new edition of the book, it's coming out in about a month. You know, we go into it. No, with Facebook is, most of the world has not figured out how to use it. They're still trying to get like free likes and free traffic and like all this kind of stuff. Okay. And it's a feeding frenzy, and like there's a ton of traffic and a ton of unused real estate. And it's going to be that way for several years. So like get in while the getting is good.
Yeah.
Now, I think a useful thing for everybody is, if you go to isfbforme.com That's our Is Facebook for You site. And it'll score you from 1 to 10 on should you use Facebook by asking these questions. It'll take you a minute to answer the questions, and it'll give you a score. Oh, you're a 5. You're a 7. Yeah. You're a 9. Absolutely. Should use it. Right? We also have Is AW for Me, is AdWordsForMe.com, is AWForMe.com. And it'll give you a score. Display network, content network, search network. Should use it or not? How competitive is it going to be? And it'll answer those questions. Now, you should do that, and it will help you, and you'll know. And if you want more explanation, you can enter your email address, and we'll tell you what your scores mean. But
a true internet marketer,
right? Well, but understand this: that what I'm doing in giving you those tools is I'm doing 80-20. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, 20% of whoever comes to this page should do this and should do business with me. 80% of the people shouldn't do this, shouldn't do business with me. I'm going to figure out right away. And I'm going to eliminate, I'm going to do you a favor. I am not going to try to convince you to do Facebook if it's not going to work for you. Or Google, right? So let's find out in 60 seconds if we should even be talking. And more people should do that. If you understand that sales is an elimination and disqualification process, not a convincing and wooing people process, if you can make that switch, your life is going to be so much easier. And so I want you to copy what I'm doing. Like, well, how would I do the same kind of thing for my customers? They will love you. I've had so many phone conversations where I said, you know what? I don't think you should be giving you money. I don't think you should buy this. First of all, they're shocked that I didn't take their money. And then I hear this big sigh of relief, and they're like, well, what do you think I should do? And they know that they know I'm going to tell them the truth. Well, guess what? If the other people know that I do that, when I tell them, dude, you got a 9.2 on that Facebook score, you should absolutely do this like yesterday, they're going to believe me.
Yeah. No, that's great. You mentioned something in there called the STAR principle, and I want to get into this a little bit before we get off here, because if there's 2 books that people need to read right now, I think it's 80-20 Sales and Marketing, and I think it's the STAR principle. I mean, those are 2 that have this fundamental feel to them. I just finished the Audible version of the STAR principle, Richard Koch, and it's amazing. I mean, it's just one of those books that, I can't stop thinking about the ideas. And you went over it so quick that I'm afraid people won't realize how genius this really is. So we have to pause on it for a second. 2 principles make up the STAR principle. 1, you have to be in a market that's growing 10% a year. And 2, you have to be the leader in that niche. So it's probably going to be a niche you're in, because you're probably not going to be Nike in a shoe market growing 10% a year, but you can be some sub-niche of a shoe market growing 10% a year, that kind of thing. So those are the 2 kind of qualifications that Richard goes through his book with. And, he's turned a few $1 million he made from consulting into a couple $100 million through just investing in companies that he thinks are what he calls stars. You have the dogs, which don't, do anything for you. You have the cash cows, which generate money, but they're not really giving you that exponential return. And then you have these stars that they are the leader in their sub-niche, and that niche is growing. Why are those 2 principles the important principles in the STAR principle? And I'm asking you because you and him are doing a lot of events together now, so this isn't a random question. You and him are actually joining up and doing a lot of cool stuff together.
Well, I really kind of kicked myself because somebody sent me the STAR Principle book several years ago, and I didn't read it until sometime in the last year or 2.
That's the way I feel.
I just, oh my goodness.
The first time I read it, I just told everybody, stop reading and just go read this. I don't know what we're doing.
Right. Exactly. And over a long period of time, I gradually became friends with Richard, and I won't go into the story, but what happened was, I got to go visit him in Portugal last winter, and between reading the STAR Principle, which I already had read, and then coming to see him, I kind of, my mind opened up, and I realized, oh my goodness, I am seriously onto something, okay? Because sometimes you just don't really get the scope of what somebody's doing or what they're about until you get a chance to talk to them, like it hadn't all clicked. There are not very many people out there who can consistently and regularly reduce very complex things down to their simple essence. But that is what he is all about. That is what he's been about for 40 years.
He's the Einstein of business.
I think that's apt. Okay, and I'm gonna quote you on that.
you can have that one. I mean,
I will.
His book is not complicated. His book is not complicated. It's E equals MC squared. There's the formula. But it is so genius when you see how well it works.
Right. Well, and so let me tell you a little bit of the story. So I had done my homework. I'd read all 6 of his books, and I get there and I read all 6 of your books. He's like, well, I haven't written 6 books. I've written 20. I'm like, what? He takes me over to this closet. He's like, it's like the author, well, here, you can have one of these and you can have one of these. He takes them to the table and he signs them for me. He's being really gracious. And I'm looking at all these books. I'm like, well, I've never seen this one. I don't even think this was on Amazon. Well, he's in Europe, and some of the stuff hasn't even made it over here. And he's not a publicist, and he's not a drum beater. And so, he's the world's most underrated author. And I'm like,
I agree.
There's this book, Suicide of the West, and it's this whole tour of Western civilization. There's another book called The Natural Laws of Business, which is so where's E equals MC squared in business, and where's natural selection in commerce, and what about Newton's laws? And it's this really crazy. And I start reading all this too. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, so okay, I found a serious Einstein person here, and dude, I'm sitting with him by the pool and we're having lunch. This is awesome, right? And but then also okay, he only works an hour a day. And again, I had to be there in person to really get it. Okay, so if a guy says in his book, I work an hour a day, you don't believe him, right? 4-hour work week. Does Tim Ferriss work 4 hours a week? No, you can figure out that he's betraying himself just by reading his blog or something, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's and I don't fault him for it. I mean, it's a great title and everything, but it's an aspiration. No, Richard is a hard ass about he only works an hour a day. Okay, and so we go there and I've been there twice, and the second time I take a video guy, and after shooting video for about an hour and 15 minutes, he's like, we're done, right? I'm like, well, I was gonna. He's like, we're done, and I'm going on a bike ride. See ya. And he won't yield on this. No, I only work an hour a day. So it's now I'll write my books and I'll read books and I'll research stuff and do what I want, and I'll ride my bike and I'll walk my dog on the beach, but I'm only working on my business 1 hour a day.
And we have to tell people the reason he's able to do that is because he's not focusing on the 80. He's not seeing the forest and missing it for the trees. He is literally seeing the fundamental laws of business and just applying leverage to those and ignoring all the noise. He's, like you said, he's not a publicist. He doesn't care if you know who he is. He still is going to make a couple $100 million because he's actually focusing on those laws and not on, please everybody know my name, because that's not what makes him money.
Right. So between the last winter when I went to see him and now he's crossed the $250 million mark.
Wow.
In net worth, and his income his wealth is going up 25% a year. It's really impressive. And so so we get into this conversation. I'm like, so now I get it, right? It's okay, Richard, you got a professional copywriter to show up and figure out what the real story is. This almost kind of happened by accident, but Richard, dude, you really have something here. And I'm trying to get him to see, because this is normal to him. I mean, he knows that not everybody does this, but he doesn't know how to tell his own story because, he's the fish in water. And I'm like, dude, we really have something here. So And we had been talking about doing an 80/20 seminar. I'm like, scrap this 80/20 seminar. We're doing a Star Principles seminar.
Yeah.
Because like,
it's
it does
80/20 in practice is what it is.
It does reduce to two things, but there are a lot of little nuances to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you do really need to know the whole formula and not just this little part of it, So, if you're going to learn 100% of something, learn 100% of the 1% that really works, not 80% of like this massive quagmire of stuff that kind of works, right? And so we decided to do that. So we're doing that September 28 to 30 in Chicago, and
nice.
It's not cheap but I'm telling you, if you're, if you make a good income and you run a business, and this will save you from so many rabbit trails that wouldn't have really turned into a big business.
Yeah. I can tell you this right now, and I haven't said this on the show at all, but my team is working on something, and we had a list of possible ideas. We listened to the STAR principle, and we got rid of all of them but one, and it was the obvious one that could be a star, and it was so obvious. We had so much clarity about the direction of our business, so much clarity about what product to produce next, and so much peace of mind about it because of the STAR principle that now we are all in 100% in this one singular direction, and there's no doubt about it, it's going to work out just fine.
Yeah.
It changed our business. So,
and it's really good. And the thing is we all, most of us at least, know what it's like before we're successful at all. Half the problem is we just don't even know what it looks like, feels like, or smells like to be successful. So we're just throwing darts in a blizzard.
And that's what the book does. It lets me smell it because he walks you through his anecdotes of what he invested in and the story arc. And it's those story arcs that I actually remember. I remember the restaurant that he built, I remember the different businesses he was in and how it felt from his point of view, which makes it all just click. So, Well, Perry, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I mean, this has been such an awesome interview. I mean, from the 80/20 stuff to the little bit of pay-per-click we got into, and then the ending with the STAR principle. I know there's going to be so many things people walk away with from this. I got one more question that I always end the interviews with. I ask it of all the guests, and it's a high-level, vague question, so you can kind of take it any direction you want. But it is, what's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow? I'm guessing I might know what yours is, but I'll ask it anyway.
Know thyself. And in the 80/20 book, I have this thing called the marketing DNA test. And it's $37, but there's a back door in the book where you can get it for free because you bought the book. And I created that because I spent so long in my sales career trying to pound my square pegs into round holes, and I was the square peg, and that is very, very painful. Okay, and what I realized, it took me a long time for this to come together. So it was like you go through the Rube Goldberg machine, and then eventually you make it simple again. I came to understand that there are 8 different ways that people sell. Or the 8 different ways that people can sell, and most people just use 2 or 3 of them. Okay. Some people are what I call hostage negotiators, and you just like throw them in a situation, and they manage to say something that gets the person to buy the thing or solves the problem. There's other people, they sell with analysis and facts, right? There's other people that sell by writing. There's other people that sell by inventing something brand new that you've never seen before and like being MacGyver. There's some people that sell with just pure emotion and heartstrings. And I reduced this down and I made this thing. And so you can, it's in the 80/20 book, and you can take this, and most people say it nails them. And it says, okay, this is how you should sell. This is who you should be selling to. This is what you should be selling. And like, don't try to screw with anything else. But more generally, you have, aside from Perry's little test or anything like that, you really have to know what your own genius is, because everybody's got their weird little dysfunctional form of genius. And it's almost impossible to recognize it from inside your own skin because it just seems normal to you. But you must know, what are you really good at and what should you eliminate, however you do it, outsource it, whatever. Because most of us, frankly, are savants. So you know what? Deal with it, acknowledge it, celebrate it, and like be okay in your own skin.
Yeah, that is awesome advice to end on. So Perry, again, thanks for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
Hey, thank you very much. And you just go to my website. You can find the book and you can find our event, and would love to have you. So
absolutely. What's the website again?
PerryMarshall.com.
PerryMarshall.com.
And you'll see the 80/20 book offer, and you'll see the Star Principle link. And let's be friends.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.